study politics or philosophy. Like that's rather straightforward in academia. It's not really a controversial take or opinion. I am mostly wondering.
We fight for the rights of people of color, women, LGBTQ folks, anybody who's a victim of discrimination, harassment, and abuse.
Oh, okay.
And we have offices in New York and Los Angeles. I have a team of 10 attorneys, and we fight very hard for people and get them terrific results. And we take cases nationwide as well.
Right on. And when you say you fight for civil rights for these people, what are civil rights?
Great question. Civil rights are, we all have certain rights. We have the right to equality, especially in employment, in housing, in public accommodations. We have the right to be treated as equals. We have the right to stand up against things like sexual harassment or race discrimination and not be retaliated against as a result. We also have Fourth Amendment rights not to be the victims of unreasonable searches and seizure by police or other government entities. So those are just a few examples.
Amazing. And do you fight for the rights for white people too?
Well,
for
I mean,
white people's civil rights?
On occasion, but primarily when we're doing a race discrimination case, we're talking about people of color who are victims, yeah.
And I noticed that in today's America, that so many white people are being discriminated against. Their rights are being taken away from them. And so if white people would come to you and say, hey, my rights are being taken because I'm white, you would take on that too?
Well, we look at every case individually.
Right.
Because we only get paid if we win. We have to take cases that we really feel confident that we can win. So you're right, everybody has the right to not be discriminated against on account of their race. And if that happened to somebody because they are white, we would look at it just like any other case. We would look at the facts and the evidence and the witnesses to see if they have a legitimate case.
Nice. I want to ask, I saw when you said Diddy, because you're representing some woman that accused Diddy.
Yes, I do.
Right. What's her name?
Dawn Richard.
Yeah, Dawn Richard. And you said that Diddy should go to prison for life or something like that?
I think what I said was, I think he is going to be in prison for life. He's currently in prison, and the criminal case against him, in my opinion, is quite strong.
Really? And I don't know anything about the case. I'm only going by the media, so I can't say who's right or who's wrong in it because I haven't spoken to Diddy yet, so I don't know, right? Or the people.
Fair enough.
Why do you think? Because we know that women lie about sex and they lie on men. Not that I don't know if these women are lying, but we know that because of the hatred that women have for men and jealous of men, it's so easy for women to falsely accuse men. They could get mad. They could be having sex with you and get up out of bed and get mad at you before they hit the floor, and they'll say you sexually harassed them or raped them and all kinds of stuff. Why would you trust women when you know that when they're crying, they're lying?
Wow. You sound like very misogynist.
What do you mean?
You sound like you really hate women.
How is that?
Because you think women are crying, they're lying, and
Have
all
you
this.
noticed that when
So
they're crying?
I would love to respond to what you said. So the FBI says that their false accusations of rape are about 2 or 3%, just as like for any other crime.
College women lie on the
Okay, and you know, rape is really an epidemic in this country. In the case of, for example, Jeffrey Epstein, he had hundreds and hundreds of accusers. You think he's innocent? You think these women are lying? You know, in some cases...
I don't know if they're lying or not, but I wouldn't just believe them knowing how easy it is for women to lie.
I'm not suggesting that you should just believe people who make an accusation. I'm an attorney. I have to prove my case in court, okay? So it's not like they just go out in the media and say something and they have to be believed. It's true that everybody deserves due process. But in the case of Sean Combs, I mean, there are allegations that there are videos, there are photos, and there are at least a couple dozen people already who have come forward making very serious accusations against him.
Right.
There's the criminal case, which the government would only bring if they think they can prove every element beyond a reasonable doubt.
Right.
So But the last thing I want to say is that if you think it's easy for someone to come forward with an accusation against somebody like Sean Combs, you really haven't sat down and listened to accusers who talk about how painful and difficult it is, how they live with this for years, how they're terrified, how they're afraid of violence, how they think there have been acts of violence against other accusers. It's an extraordinarily difficult and brave thing for an accuser to come forward.
But that's why I say when they're crying, when they're saying, and I'm not talking about any particular case because I don't know, but when they're doing that, they're lying. Because what I know.
Why would you assume that? Why would you assume that someone's lying? Why not give her a fair hearing and also give him a fair hearing?
I wouldn't take either one of their sides, you know?
Okay, but you don't say he's lying. You're saying the women are lying. You've said that several times.
I know so many cases where women are lied on men, wives lie on husbands when they want to take the children away from the man.
Wow.
They just start crying. Yeah, he touched the kids in the wrong way. Or he raped me. Or they just throw their lies out there and then they cry. And I know they're lying. You agree with that, Elise?
It just sounds like you're not in perfect peace right now. You sound very angry at women, and you sound very disparaging of women. Maybe you've had some bad experiences with women. Maybe some women have accused you, Jesse.
And so if that's the case with the women that are accusing the men, they've had bad experiences, or they just accuse the men?
No, there's very few men who talk the way you do.
Misogynists.
You're definitely a misogynist based on what you just said.
So are these women misogynists?
Sorry?
Are those women who are accusing men, are they misogynists?
That's not a word.
I just made it up.
I think androgynous, no, I don't know, that androgynous is different.
Right.
I don't know what the word is, but no, but the way that you talk about women generally is very sexist and hateful. I have to tell you, to say that women are liars
You
as
can't
a
believe
group,
them.
as a group, yeah, so you sound like you've got some issues with women. It's probably why you're single.
So if women believe that men are lying, are they having issue with men?
I don't hear any women say all men are lying. The
I
way
didn't
you
say
just said.
all.
Well, you
I
said women.
I said when
generally.
they are crying,
Yeah,
they're lying.
and you also said women are liars.
No, not all.
I didn't say all.
But when they're, one thing I know,
It's on tape. That somebody can play it back.
one thing I know
You said
for
what
sure.
you said. Do you want to back off of it now and
No.
retract
One
it?
thing I know for sure, when they're crying, all women, when they're crying, they're lying.
So that sounds like you have so little compassion in your heart. If someone's crying, they're hurting.
They're lying.
Wow. So you really have no compassion for a woman who's hurting and weeping in her pain?
And what is
Is that
compassion?
what is compassion?
Yeah.
Kindness in your heart towards someone else who's hurting? Doesn't sound like you have much of that, if
I don't
any.
understand that.
Clearly you don't. That's pretty,
Right, what does that
pretty
mean?
sad.
What does that
Are you a narcissist, Jesse?
What do you mean?
You know what a narcissist is?
So let me go back to something else. I noticed that whenever there's a situation between men and women, and these women say, oh, they raped me, or whatever, right? Like these parties with Jeffrey and now Diddy, and I'm sure it's going to happen to other men. Why don't they ever ask the woman, why did you go to that party? What were you looking for from Diddy? Why did you go to the party? Because I notice when people go to these parties, yes, Diddy may or may not want sex from them, but they want something from Diddy, and that's why they go to the party up, they have fun, they drink, they do their thing. Why
So no one should ever go to a party?
Why is it that it's never a question of why did you go to that party?
Also, what about the men who are accusing
What was
Diddy?
it that you wanted from Diddy? Why that's not?
I can answer
why
that.
that's not, okay.
So first of all, I don't hear you criticizing the men who have made accusations against Diddy. Are
That's
they?
not answering the question.
Well, I know, but you on this real
I want to know
anti-woman
why do
rant.
these women go to these
Okay,
parties? What
I
is
can
it
answer
they,
that if you take a breath and
What
let me
is it
answer.
that they want from Diddy and people like that?
They want a break to get into the music industry. And what's
Right.
wrong with that?
And he wants sex, right?
In some cases, apparently that's what's accused.
And
Yes.
so, and the women are willing to give up the
No,
sex to
they're
get
not.
what they
There's
want.
accusations that they were not willing, that they were drugged, that they were forced, that they were underage. So again, you have this slanted thing in your head that women all are evil and liars. but people have the right to go to a party and not be sexually assaulted. People have the right, I'm still talking. People have the right to go to a party and not be drugged against their will, not to be groped and grabbed. Do you have children?
Yes.
Do you have a daughter?
Yes, granddaughter.
Okay, if she goes to a party, is she asking to be raped? Is it her fault for going to a party?
If she goes there looking for something for the party owner.
What if somebody says, you know, I can help you with your singing career, and she goes, okay, a lot of business is done at these kind of parties. Would she deserve to be raped?
Why was an underage person at a grown-up party?
Because they were invited and they were hoping to get into the music industry, or somebody brought them. Okay, so you're going to blame...
That's my case.
You do? You're going to blame a child for being sexually assaulted? Is that who you are?
A child.
An underage person?
What's an underage person that is a child?
Underage is a child, yes.
What's an underage child? I'm trying to understand the age range.
Oh, I don't know. Those are not my cases, but I know that they're alleged to have been underage.
Yeah, the adult.
All right.
What do you think about that?
I think we're going to have about 2 more minutes, and I can't talk to somebody who's from the 19th century, so I think we're just about done. You're saying that women dress like sluts and ask for rape. This is not an intelligent conversation. I almost feel like you're punking me, Jesse. Are you? I mean, nobody...
I'm not saying that they're asking
I
for
gotta
rape.
wonder what you've done in your life that you have these thoughts.
I'm not saying that they ask for rape, but I'm asking... Why don't we deal with both sides and just
well, that's what trials do.
I mean, in the media as well.
Well, I think the media does. If you read the articles, I don't know where you're getting your media.
And so, are you married?
I'm single.
So you've never been married?
Oh, I've been married.
And when you, as a woman who emboldened, been raised the way you were raised, did you obey your husband?
Oh, God, no.
You did not obey him? God, no. And why not?
Why would I? Why doesn't he obey me?
What?
Why wouldn't he obey me? Why? You really think a woman should obey her husband?
Right. It won't. The marriage won't work if she doesn't obey him.
Oh, okay.
Have you noticed that?
No, I haven't noticed that because I don't live in 1950.
Meaning what?
Meaning it's a very antiquated idea. You don't think women should have equal rights?
I don't know. There is no such thing as equal rights.
Oh, okay.
There's an order to life, but no equal rights. Do you have kids?
I do.
You do have kids? Mm-hmm. And are you teaching them in the same way you were taught?
The 2026 midterms are just around the corner, and the president is starting to panic, as are his fellow Republicans, who are facing terrible polls and historical swings in off-year elections. Not to worry, though, the president has a plan, and that plan is to make it really hard for Americans to vote. On February 4th, Trump went on Dan Bongino's podcast and announced that elections needed to be nationalized.
We want to take over. We should take over the voting in at least 15 places. The Republicans ought to nationalize the voting.
A few weeks later, a PBS News reporter asked him about a 17-page draft executive order that would do just that.
Are you declaring a national emergency around the midterm election?
Who told you that? Not, there's no such document, not, that's absurd. Trump didn't disavow it because he knows it's real. In fact, it's been kicking around Republican inboxes for almost a year now. For the past year, the Trump administration has been running an all-fronts campaign to seize control of American elections through executive orders, FBI raids, Justice Department lawsuits against states, the systematic dismantling of election security infrastructure, and a piece of legislation called the SAVE Act that cannot pass but won't quite die. Kind of like the lie about foreign interference in American elections, which can be used to justify just about anything. The Constitution's Elections Clause vests the power to run elections in 2 separate entities. It says the times, places, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives shall be prescribed in each state by the legislature thereof, but the Congress may at any time by law make or alter such regulations. So the states run their own elections. State legislators set the rules and local officials carry them out. but Congress can override those rules, at least for federal elections, by passing an actual law. Note that the Constitution gives the president exactly 0 role in administering or certifying elections. And that was not an oversight by the founders. They just fought a war to liberate themselves from a monarch, and they weren't trying to empower a president to take control of elections and make himself ruler for life. So they gave states primary authority over elections and empowered Congress to step in as a check. And Congress has passed a few narrow statutes that give the executive branch some limited election-related authority. And crucially, every single one of those laws was enacted to make it easier to vote, not harder. The Voting Rights Act of 1965 was signed into law after Bloody Sunday when police beat Congressman John Lewis and hundreds of other peaceful civil rights marchers on the Edmund Pettus Bridge. It gives the Department of Justice authority to sue states for racially discriminatory election practices which keep Black Americans from the polls. The National Voter Registration Act of 1993, sometimes called the Motor Voter Act, was designed to increase civic participation by requiring states to register voters at the DMV. The Help America Vote Act of 2002 was passed in response to the chaos of the 2000 Florida recount. It created the Independent Bipartisan Election Assistance Commission to distribute federal funds for election modernization and set voluntary equipment standards. But now the president is using those same laws to make it harder for Americans to cast their ballots, purportedly to solve the non-existent problem of vote fraud. And Trump isn't too clear on the mechanism of that fraud. Maybe it's Chinese Bluetooth thermostats, or maybe it's undocumented immigrants flooding the polls to vote for Democrats, or maybe it's nefarious algorithms infecting voting machines. But some sort of way, there's cheating going on, and he knows it. How else could he have lost the popular vote in 2016 and both the popular vote and the Electoral College in 2020?
And counties are won by 2,750. Look at this. 550. 2,750 to 550. It's becoming a very good count because it's accurate. You know, it covers the whole country. It's like a landslide. But you're never going to have that again if you don't get these people out. These people were brought to our country.
And so, Trump is doing what he always does, shout emergency, and claim powers to accomplish by executive fiat what he cannot do by law. We are living through a very odd moment, so if you're concerned with the government playing fast and loose with everybody's private voter data, then now is probably a good time to wipe all your personal and private information off the internet. Your cell phone number, home address, email address, private social media accounts, and tons of sensitive data are shockingly easy to purchase by anybody online. But malicious actors cannot hurt you. They can't find you. So you can attack your private information by signing up for today's sponsor, Incogni. Incogni wipes your personal data from the internet by searching and reaching out to data brokers and websites directly on your behalf and forcing them to remove your private info. If those sites resist, Incogni will take care of that too, because Incogni fights back. But what makes Incogni truly powerful in taking back control of your privacy is the custom removals feature. It allows you to flag an unlimited number of sites where your data is exposed, and you can even have Incogni's privacy experts review and tackle the most uncooperative data brokers and people's search sites. I've been using Incogni for a while now, and in that time, you can see I've been on hundreds of lists, some of which had a high sensitivity score, meaning the broker had tons of data on it. Luckily, Incogni has completed hundreds of takedowns. I never do this myself, so thank you to Incogni for weeks of work in adding me to over 40 suppression lists. And Incogni will continue to conduct ongoing removals because even if the broker removes your data once, they can collect it and publish it again. So if online privacy is important to you, give Incogni a try. If you scan the code on screen or click on the link in the description, you'll get 60% off their annual unlimited plan, or try Incogni risk-free for 30 days. If you decide you want to keep it, you'll still get the 60% discount so long as you use our code LEGALEAGLE, all one word. So sign up for Incogni or we will see you in court. Trump's first salvo came on March 25th, 2025, when he signed an executive order titled Preserving and Protecting the Integrity of American Elections. It directed the Election Assistance Commission, which Congress designed to be insulated from presidential control, to make fundamental changes to the way elections are conducted in America. It gave the Department of Homeland Security and the Doge Bros access to state voter rolls to facilitate voter purges. It directed the EAC to withhold federal funding from states that count mail-in ballots postmarked by Election Day but received after. And, crucially, it purported to impose a requirement that Americans present documentary proof of citizenship when they register to vote. The National Voter Registration Act dictates that the federal voter registration form may only require you to attest under penalty of perjury that you're a citizen. And when Arizona tried to add a documentary proof of citizenship requirement in 2013, the Supreme Court blocked it. It's important to understand, though, that presidential proclamations, even when they're executive orders, are not automatically binding on anyone outside the executive branch. I think a lot about this line from Shakespeare's play Henry IV. One character says, "I can call spirits from the vasty deep," and the other says, "Why, so can I, and so can any man. But will they come when you do call them?" The president can only do things the law empowers him to do. He can't walk into your local polling place and say, "Don't count these ballots because they're late or machine tabulated or whatever," or he can, but it's effectively calling spirits from the vasty deep. You know, so can I and so can any man, but they will not come when you do call for them. Now, the president does have control over the executive branch, and so he could potentially order executive agencies to change the mail-in voter registration form so that it would require proof of documentary citizenship. And so Judge Colleen Collar-Patelli of the U.S. District Court in D.C. blocked the proof of citizenship requirement and changed to the National Voter Registration Form. She said the framers of our Constitution recognized that power over election rules could be abused either to destroy the national government or to disempower the people from acting as a check on their elected representatives. They assigned no role at all to the president. Put simply, our Constitution does not allow the president to impose unilateral changes to federal election procedures. But obviously, that wasn't the end of the story. Meanwhile, over in Congress, Trump's allies have been trying to pass legislation to codify his executive order into law with a statute that would secure our elections by making it a lot harder to vote. And let's not get it twisted here. There's no plague of voter fraud, and the instances of non-citizen voting are vanishingly rare. A 2025 audit of Michigan's 7.2 million registered voters in the 2024 election turned up 15 suspected non-citizens who actually cast a ballot. That's 0.00028%. Election officials in Utah reviewed 2.1 million registered voters and found one confirmed non-citizen on the rolls, and that person had never voted. The proposed solution to this problem will disenfranchise millions of American citizens. That's like trying to take out a mosquito with a rocket launcher. And if you tell me we got to disenfranchise millions of qualified American voters to protect our election from a few dozen.
Pick your hero or villain. I'm not judging.
Do you know the story of Pandora's box? It is said that when the lid of the jar was removed and a legion of plagues rushed out from it to end humanity's golden age, only one curse remained imprisoned when the seal was quickly replaced. The final evil, kept in the dark to prolong our suffering, was called hope. According to the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, the reason that hope was left in the box in that famous story, it was not to symbolize the single comfort that was left to humanity, but rather as the one evil that humanity would never come to realize. Zeus, in Greek mythology, did not want man to throw his life away no matter how much the other evils might torment him, but rather to go on to let themselves be tormented anew. And to that end, he gave men hope, so that they may suffer eternally without surrendering. In truth, said Nietzsche, hope is the most evil of evils because it prolongs man's torment. His reasoning is that hope does not remove suffering. Instead, it acts as an illusion that induces humans to endure torment they would otherwise reject. After all, hope is always false hope, at least until it isn't. But when it isn't, then it is no longer hope anyways. And so, hope is always false hope. In the world of Dungeons & Dragons, belief and emotion can manifest power. In fact, that is how gods are created. When enough mortals get together and believe in the existence of a force, that force is literally created. The more belief there is in it, the more powerful it becomes. This effect applies not just to the gods, but to concepts. It is believed that the four most powerful concepts in the cosmos of D&D are law, chaos, good, and evil, such that the vast majority of sentient beings that exist inherently belong to or exude the qualities of one or more of these four concepts. We also know that these concepts and the powers that they bring can be utilized by those that truly encompass the qualities of those concepts. For example, Baal, the god of murder, can enact murder upon those he desires. Another example are paladins, who can make a vow to a concept of their choice, and then, provided that they encompass the qualities of that concept, they can obtain powers that relate to the concept. A paladin that makes a vow of peace can gain powers that allow it to do peace, provided again that the paladin is peaceful. And when it is no longer peaceful, it of course loses those powers. Some concepts can represent more than what originally meets the eye. For example, the concept of murder. Murder, as defined, is the unlawful killing of a person. To commit murder, you must, by its very nature, commit an act that is opposed to law, which inherently furthers chaos. So an entity that embodies murder will inherently also embody chaos. Now, what is chaos? Where does it fall truly in the cosmic struggle between law and chaos, between good and evil? Evil men can hope as much as any good man, but does it further the powers of law or of chaos? Or is it perhaps something in between? Neutrality, a powerful concept often left forgotten. I would like to take a minute here to thank today's sponsor, World Anvil. See, whether you are a game master, a writer, or just someone that loves building imaginary worlds, you know the struggle of keeping track of your lore. Even if you think that you're being organized by having a single cohesive Google Doc, you still have to figure out how to organize your game's art, your tables, your maps, and your items. And it is certainly not the type of data that you can just give your players. You're never going to give your Google Doc to your player because it is full of spoilers. But this is why World Anvil is the robust solution to that problem. So if you have never tried World Anvil, it is basically like a wiki for your story or your campaign, but with very powerful features. You can easily link from one entry onto another. You can set up word Bibles so that when one player clicks on a specific word, they can be taken to a description of that word. Okay, check this out. So if an event happens in your D&D adventure, you, or you could just ask one of your players to do this, you could input that event onto the system. And if you then add a date to that event, as well as a location by pinning it on the map, and if you were to add the characters or NPCs that were involved on that event, you can actually have World Anvil literally be able to automatically track where those NPCs or players have been, what they have done, and what else was happening during the time that those events took place. So you can create a timeline or chronology of events that make it just so much easier for you to track just what the hell is happening in your world. And again, you can just ask your players to do this for you while you do the villain in the background, setting up all of the different things that the villain does and when they do them so that you can keep track of what's going on. If you were ever worried about how other DMs were able to keep so much of their information together, this is why. And if you're unsure, you could literally go onto the website right now and check the open worlds that they have in there that people have created and just see it for yourself. See how people utilize this product and why you have heard the name World Anvil so many times, because people love this. So stop using Google Docs, stop keeping paper notes, and just check this out and give it a try. Go and actually see what people are doing with this. It'll make your life a lot easier. But please, if you do so, do it through my link, which you can find on the video description to take you onto the website. It helps me out and of course helps keep the channel going. And if you like what you see, you can use the code Mr. Rex to get a 51% off discount on any yearly membership. That is 51% off, so do not waste it. Thank you, World Anvil, once again for sponsoring this video, and now, back to Hope. In Baldur's Gate 3, there exists a place called the House of Hope. This is the home and sanctuary of Raphael, the powerful champion that follows you throughout the game in hopes of buying your soul. Less than a home and more of a prison, Raphael keeps all of the poor souls that have signed a contract with him in here, to languish and to serve him for all time. All but for one. There is in fact one single soul imprisoned in here that has not yet signed a contract with Raphael, a female gold dwarf named Hope, which is held by infernal chains deep in the complexes. Hope has always been fascinating because for reasons that are largely left unexplained, she appears to be incredibly powerful. She can appear and speak from anywhere in this location and knows what is happening, not just within the House of Hope, but seemingly even beyond it. And she can do this while she is clearly imprisoned and unable to move. Raphael appears to be obsessed with her, and perhaps most important of all, when she is freed, she's able to use a power called Remove Mist Status, which she uses to automatically banish away any minion of her choice outside of Raphael himself, away from the House of Hope. When you inspect her, the game tells you that she is a level 10 cleric who uses the life domain, but interestingly, there is never really any mention of her being a cleric in any of the actual dialogue of the game, nor of any god that she may be associated with. In Baldur's Gate 3, clerics almost always mention their god in one way or another, and you would stand to reason an imprisoned cleric would, if anything, usher a small prayer to their god in hopes of salvation, but that never really happens here with Hope. This made all the more interesting because dwarves almost always follow a very strict set of gods, which we know as the Dwarven Pantheon, and they do so with such degree that it is almost intertwined with their very culture. For example, dwarves have common phrases that they use, such as by Muradin's beard, which they might say whenever they are shot. And Muradin, in this case, is the chief god of the Pantheon, but again, Hope never makes any such mentions. In fact, the game alludes to the fact that the centuries of torture that she has endured while being a prisoner in here has all but destroyed her mind, even going so far as to say that there might be not much of hope truly left. Yet, in spite of all of these things, she is still powerful. She still has her magic, all while clinging to hope. And of course, as you mentioned, there isn't really a god of hope in the Dwarven Pantheon, which of course makes things even more complicated. Now, things are made even more confusing when Hope rewards you at the end of her quest line with what is effectively a legendary set of bracers called the Gloves of Soul Catching, which, by all intents and purposes, it is clearly a magical item for monks. According to the tooltip of the gloves, they belong to a meditator who gained enlightenment. But the methods by which he gained enlightenment are nonsensical and almost border on madness, claiming that he did so by becoming more social, wearing a lavender-colored skirt, and by breaking cosmic harmony several times. But that's just the tooltip. If we take the name and the fact of the gloves at face value, it actually alludes to allowing the wearer to literally grab and consume souls in order to restore health or become more powerful. And Hope does have an interesting dialogue line in which he says, quote, "He will have your guts for starters and your soul for dessert. Souls taste like honeyed tarts," end quote. Of course, she is suggesting here that she may have eaten souls before and therefore knows what they taste like. And let us not mention the fact that Raphael consumes souls as part of his final battle by taking them from the pillars found at the entrance of the House of Hope. So there are indeed many souls in here that one is against the world. Now, all of this is to say that Hope is a fascinating but mysterious character. So to delve deeper here, first we should look at some of the most interesting journals that you can find in the game which are related to her, just to see if we can maybe find more information that we can use to really determine what or who she really is. And to do that, we will start first at her imprisonment. In the House of Hope, you can find 3 letters called Taming Hope, with a Part 1, Part 2, and Part 3, and all of them were written by Carilla. Carilla Hearthflame is Hope's sister, who, a long time ago, made a pact with Raphael in order to become a warlock. So she is in fact a dwarf that spies on you and your party throughout the first portions of the game, and even saves you in some circumstances if you get in trouble. For example, if Priestess Duck captures you in the Goblin camp, it is actually Carilla who kills the Priestess and then rescues you. But anyways, the notes that speak about Hope's imprisonment are actually written by Carilla, who is writing the transcript of the conversations between Raphael and her sister. The transcripts cover the efforts that Raphael is going through in order to try and convince Hope of serving him willingly, and when that doesn't work, how he transitions into torturing her to convince her, which also does not work. There are, however, some really fascinating things in these transcripts that makes Hope as a character even more interesting. Here, check this part out from Part 1, where Raphael says, "And yet, we do not wrong. Hope, don't look so alone. This little realm around us, this house, you have mastery of it. to which Hope replies, "And you of me." So this section, as far as I have found, unless you guys can point me to another in the comments, it might be the only reference in the game that specifically and directly mentions Hope's unique ability to control the House of Hope. It also describes the House of Hope as a little realm, but it is unclear whether or not that is meant to be taken metaphorically or literally, as in, we know that the House of Hope is in Avernus, but we don't know if it is technically a demiplane or if it is a physical location that you can find in Avernus. Now, in part 2 of these letters, Raphael decides to punish Hope for not submitting to him by attaching an Om1 Dreamcatcher to her, which apparently is a magical item designed to capture nightmares. Things like these are usually used to prevent children from having nightmares, as the nightmares get instead trapped in the Dreamcatcher. But if you place the Dreamcatcher on someone's neck, those nightmares will invade the wearer's mind and haunt it, forcing them to live through the visions. And so part 2 basically ends as Corilla describes in the notes the horrifying screams of Hope as she is assaulted by these nightmares. And then finally in part 3, it is revealed that Hope was left wearing that Dreamcatcher for months, but instead of breaking her spirit, she somehow persevered through it, coming out somewhat deranged, but still put together. And one last time, the notes do write about how Hope denies to serve Raphael in spite of all of the trauma that she has suffered. Now, the reason how Hope was able to withstand all of this torture and survive was ostensibly because she had hope. Hope is the illusion that a positive future awaits you, in spite of the lack of any objective reason to believe it so, and it is this illusion which allowed her to prolong her suffering and deny Raphael his wish. This much is very clear in both her dialogue and in the themes that surround her character. She says it explicitly sometimes. Quote, "I will endure until you find me." Hope always does, end quote. And she says it metaphorically when she says things like, quote, "Feel my power." But there is something different as well, something unique in what she does and says. Parts of her dialogue, if you pay close attention, seem to allude to the fact that she is not just being literal in her feeling hope that things will be okay, and not being metaphorical either in her interpretations of hope. The way that she expresses her feelings of hope as well as her as a person almost seems to combine the two. Like, she is hope. She represents hope. She gives hope. I mean, let's just take a look at that previous dialogue again. Quote,
I am hope. What little is left of her.
end quote. This is such a weird but interesting quote because her name is Hope, so you could interpret this line as her simply saying her own name, but then she speaks of herself in the third person, which I guess kind of makes sense when you consider the fact that she has been made a bit mad by the torture, but it is still a bit confusing because this could also be interpreted as well as her saying that she and identity or concept known as Hope are one and the same, and that there is little of either left. Okay, so let's see this other line of dialogue where she says, quote,
I can't leave.
Ain't ready for Rogue to be a widow. Not yet.
But I'm supposed to do that in silence. Everyone here hates me for what I am.
end quote. It would stand to reason that perhaps the debtors in the House of Hope would hate her because she is the only one that has the strength of will to not sign the contract that Raphael offers. But with so much torture that she is made to suffer that everyone here knows about, where none of the other souls in here are made to suffer in that way, it would actually be weird for anyone to be jealous of her. That doesn't make any sense. So why actually do they hate her? The interpretation that I have for this line of dialogue and what is happening to this character is that Hope, the dwarf, sees herself as a concept of hope, to the point where the two have now become one and the same in her mind. She had to believe in hope so badly in order to survive the horrors of her torture, that she ended up breaking her own psyche along the way in order to make herself truly believe that there was hope, even when you would have no reason to believe it so. It's almost as if she reached a form of enlightenment, just like the story in the toolkit for the gloves of her catching, by effectively breaking down the barriers of her own mind. It made her partially mad, true, but it also allowed her to fundamentally shift her perspective and allow her to believe in a hope so profoundly that maybe she would see herself as being hope. In other words, she believes that everyone in the House of Hope hates her because she is giving them hope, and They all know that it is that very same hope that is extending their misery. These debtors can't simply make peace with their shitty reality because hope keeps making them believe that they will one day escape. And because that's what hope does. And that is just making them more and more miserable whenever it doesn't happen. And there is, of course, another interpretation in which she might actually be referring to the fact that she is the House of Hope, and that they hate her because she is their person. But we will get there. That is, of course, an entirely different matter. But one thing that you have to understand, not just about Dungeons and Dragons, but specifically about the Nine Hells, is that names have power. In many cases, unique devils transform into unique shapes that conform to their names, and is one of the main reasons why only the higher tier of devils are allowed to develop a true name, because when you develop your own true name, it is much harder for another devil to control you. Zariel controls her troops because if they disobey her, she can simply transform them into legionaries, weak, pitiful devils, and she can do that because the low-ranking devils that form those legions do not have true names. In any case, in the Nine Hells of Canon Law, your name has real, tangible power, and when you are able to transform into that which is your name, or when your name becomes that which you are, that is how you begin to ascend. As above, so below. As the name, so the thing. Read this line of dialogue from Hope and see for yourself. Quote,
And the thing that kills you, and the only way.
By the eye of Agamotto!
A hug. First beats one's heart.
end quote. This is a riddle, she mutters, and in it, it is clear as day that she is referencing the concept of hope, the abstract yet tangible power that is hope. Quote,
Who am I? Oh, it's my favorite question. I scream it into the dark while I sleep, and whisper it to my memories when I wake.
end quote. It appears to me that Hope, the dwarf, is channeling the power of hope, the abstract, as her power, which as I described earlier in this video, is a thing that not just exists in Dungeons & Dragons, but is actually quite common among paladins. The game, of course, has her as a cleric in her in-game description, but we also know that players can tap into this power as easily as paladins can. In fact, in the player's handbook for 3.5 edition of D&D, there was a whole paragraph in the cleric section that was just dedicated to telling you that a cleric could follow an abstract concept rather than a god, so this is not new. This definitely answers a lot of questions, particularly those regarding her divine powers and the bizarre lines of dialogue that she has. It even explains why a power such as hope would have a stronghold here in the hells of all places, when typical holy powers of good struggle to reach these dark realms. It explains it when you realize that hope is not necessarily a holy power of good, and it might actually be a power of evil, or if anything, a neutral power, depending on your point of view. But what it doesn't do is explain why exactly can she control the House of Hope. In fact, what is the House of Hope? Was it named because of the dwarf named Hope? Or was it a coincidence? Was it named like that merely to spite the dwarf? Did the dwarf have her cleric powers before she got captured? Or did she develop those powers specifically to withstand her torture? Part 1 of the letters written by her sister clearly show that even before she suffered the most of her trauma and torture, Raphael had already mentioned that Hope had the power to control the realm that is the House of Hope. So either her control of this realm is separate to the powers that she manifested as a cleric of hope, which would likely mean that she developed those powers directly as a result of her torture, or her control of the realm is tied to her powers as a cleric of hope, which would likely mean that she always had those powers, even before she was captured. And well, this is where we start to hit some really unfortunate roadblocks, because we don't really know much about what exactly is the House of Hope, or what connection Hope, the dwarf, has to this location. It would actually be a lot easier if she either had no control over this location or full control of it, but the fact that she has partial control of it is what makes it so weird. When she's freed, she can banish almost anyone that she wants from the house, but for some reason, she cannot banish Raphael, even though she has ostensibly signed no contract with him. She can also do a wide variety of things while she is in prison, such as know where things are, she can read private documents, she can communicate with creatures, hell, she even knows exactly where Raphael is, even when he is not in the House of Hope, as in, she knows when he is coming. But the one thing that she cannot seem to do while imprisoned is to banish guests from the house. She can only do that after she is freed. And more mysterious of all, after she is freed and after Raphael is defeated, Hope claims in several different ways that she cannot leave the House of Hope. Quote,
"And go where? I don't think I quite know how to be anywhere else but here anymore.
There is also, quote,
And I can hardly leave. After all, who would ever want to think of hell without hope?"
end quote. This genuinely seems to allude to the fact that Hope might be intrinsically attached or be part of the House of Hope. But beyond that, the game doesn't make it easy to determine what really is going on here, so to do that, you're gonna have to explore a few possibilities and see if the events here resemble other events found throughout the history of Dungeons & Dragons. So to do that, let's first set up some important factors. 1. Hope is or has the potential to become a powerful conduit of divine energy. 2. Hope has power, control, and senses over the House of Hope. 3. Raphael wants Hope to serve him willingly and has, by his own words, offered her more than he has ever offered any other being. 4. Killing Hope does not seem to, at least not immediately, destroy or affect the House of Hope. And lastly, 5, she is not a celestial, a god, or any other kind of special spirit, since she has a normal mortal sister and both mention instances of their childhood in a presumably normal world. And so with those factors, let's see what we can find in D&D. Option 1. The House of Hope could be the convocation of a powerful cleric spell. If Hope was always a cleric of hope, and a powerful one too, it is possible that she might be able to cast a spell like Temple of the Gods, a 7th tier spell that manifests a massive construction whose size, shape, and themes would reflect your god, or in this case, would reflect Hope. The spell would allow Hope to have several ways to control the construction, including who can come in and out, how the place is laid out, and how protected it would be against intrusion. And if the spell would be cast enough times, the location would become permanent. Even though the spell does not allow the location to be too big, in theory you could build a larger location by manifesting it piece by piece, making one piece permanent before moving on to the next and just combining them all together. Since you can decide who has the power to enter the location whenever the spell is cast, it would stand to reason that she would have allowed her sister once upon a time, and now it is through her sister that Raphael can come in and out. And so her sister has to allow Raphael to enter every single time, which is why she knows whenever Raphael is coming, because she knows whenever Karila opens that door. Unfortunately though, the spell doesn't really mention anything regarding granting the caster the ability to see into or communicate magically throughout the place. It would, however, explain why the place would be called the House of Hope, as it would be a temple dedicated to the concept of hope, and it would explain why someone like Raphael would want it, as it comes with some really powerful protections against intrusion and scrying. Now, I know that this is a 7th tier spell, and technically, Hope is only a 10th level cleric, which means that she would not be able to cast the spell normally. However, I have read that the original level cap for the game, before it was released, was actually level 10, so it is possible that this was just a leftover from a previous level cap. But it would be a nudge against this particular theory. Option 2, which is my favorite option. Hope is a Dark Lord. In the world of Dungeons & Dragons, there exist demi-planes that are formed by the emotions, subconscious, or by the direct will of one or more of the creatures that inhabit those demi-planes. The most common way to create one of those demi-planes, of course, is through magic, by casting a spell such as the 8th tier spell Demi-Plane, but other times it can happen merely by accident, or when a person's belief is far too strong. This is far easier to have happen, for example, in the ethereal plane, the home of most demiplanes that exist. Most demiplanes are small pockets of existence created for a singular purpose, but a rare few can grow to be as big as entire worlds. And there is literally no limit to how they can look like or how realistic they can feel. The best example of this are the domains of dread. massive demiplanes shaped by the Dark Powers, a mysterious set of powerful yet unknown beings who create these demiplanes to function as prisons. Each of these demiplane prisons is designed to torture one special individual because their torture both fuels the magic of the demiplane and simultaneously feeds the Dark Powers. And those beings, which the demiplanes are designed to torture, are called Dark Lords. The most famous of all Dark Lords, of course, is the vampire Strad von Zarovich, who is kept in the demiplane of Barovia to be perpetually denied the object of his obsession, while at the same time dangling that obsession before him for all time, which is of course the torture. Anyhow, even though the Dark Lord is the prisoner, the prison demiplane is always tailored to be perfect for them, to be basically a reflection of them. Usually the Dark Lord has vast and overwhelming powers to control or manipulate the demiplane, as well as to allow beings to enter or exit it. These powers are usually grand and cannot be overruled as long as they don't affect the torture that the Dark Lord is meant to suffer. Now, obviously, I'm not suggesting that Hope is literally a Dark Lord, captured and imprisoned by the Dark Powers, but what I am suggesting is that the magic that is at play here in the Domains of Dread might actually be similar to those found here. In the case of Hope, it is entirely possible that the House of Hope is a demiplane that rests within Avernus, whose anchor is Hope herself, being its creator. Hope might have created this demiplane at some point, either purposefully or not, to be used as a, literal House of Hope, to help people that are stuck in hell. That is, until she was eventually captured and then made prisoner by Raphael. Much how a dark power can utilize the demiplane and extract power from the Dark Lord, Raphael can manipulate and use the House of Hope demiplane by having control over Hope. Her torture, agony, and misery would then go on to empower the demiplane and to feed a power that is equivalent to that of souls onto the devil. Now, even if the way by which this would happen might feel like a stretch and it still leaves so much unanswered, it does remain that there are a surprisingly large number of connections between Hope and a typical Dark Lord. If this place was a demiplane and if she was the creator, this type of connection would likely be the closest analog that we would have. Plus, the death of a Dark Lord does not, in fact, destroy the demiplane. It would simply cause her to be restored to life in due time, which ironically would also explain why she keeps mentioning how she has all of these several pieces of her body removed by part of the torture.
I must be so terribly mutilated after all these decades of torture. Don't hold back. Tell me how bad it is.
Yet she looks seemingly perfectly normal. See, apparently, according to the story and the dialogue, she has had her lips torn out, her tongue cut out, her face disfigured, yet she looks quite normal. Once again, that would be exactly what would happen with a Dark Lord. I should also mention that you technically do not need to be evil to produce the type of effect that creates a Dark Lord. You just have to have a powerful obsession or a strong emotion to create and sustain the demiplane. I should also mention that there are other interesting examples of powerful beings that become symbiotically connected to the location that they inhabit. Particularly so if the creatures are very, very powerful and the locations are magical. For example, and people might actually recognize this character, Halaster and Undermountain. Undermountain is the enormous labyrinthine dungeon that exists directly below the city of Waterdeep, and Halaster is the wizard that basically was able to tame it and make it his lair. Over time, the wizard Halaster went mad, but he was able to sort of attune himself to the dungeon. And now he can basically appear almost anywhere in the dungeon. He can control it at will, he can make passages appear or disappear or even change, he can ban certain spells from being cast at all in the dungeon, and much more. So technically you don't even need this place to be a demiplane for this type of magic to take effect. But we also have heard stories of creatures that are permanently banished into demiplanes that contain nothing but a single endless maze. There's of course the famous 8th tier spell in 5th edition called Maze that literally does that. It banishes a creature onto a maze for either 10 minutes or until the creature successfully navigates the maze, whichever happens first. Now, the most interesting stories come from maze demiplanes that are permanent, such as those created by the Lady of Pain, the ruler of Sigil, the city found at the center of the Outer Planes. There is a famous story that anyone that impedes her from doing her work is permanently banished into a maze demiplane to basically live there until the end of their days. But what is interesting is that there are actually stories of creatures that are able to master the maze. Since the maze has no actual real exit, to truly solve it, you basically have to become one with the demiplane which houses it. This would allow you to manipulate the maze, to shift it and transform it. Because when you do that, you are able to then literally fabricate an exit for yourself. This is the only way to do it, and this would be the type of power that we're talking about. Theoretically, you could do that with almost any demiplane. Now, there are also other angles that we can investigate outside of demiplanes that do follow this peculiar paradigm, but let me set this up a bit. So, you know the group of tieflings that you find at the beginning of the game? These guys are migrating because their city was destroyed, or more accurately, their city was dragged directly into hell. That city is called Elturel, and for the longest time, the city had a massive orb of light that floated right above it, which was called the Companion. It turned out that the Companion was actually an angel imprisoned within the orb, and its power was used as a battery to fuel the city's defenses. The city was eventually dragged down onto hell as a result of a devil contract, and that entire storyline was actually one of the adventures from Dungeons & Dragons that were used as a prequel material for this game. So the concept of capturing a vessel of positive energy with which you can then fuel a base of operation, a location, demiplane or not, is definitely possible and has been done in the past. But finally, we have option 3. Hope is actually neither a mortal nor a dwarf. Now this option is far less satisfying because it goes against some of the information that we have been given, so it basically relies on the assumption that we should not pay attention to some details while focusing more on other, more convenient details. And as such, I'm not gonna delve too deep here, but there are some interesting things that we can at least talk about because, well, like I said, they are very interesting. There is actually an old class from 3rd edition called the Incarnate. You can find it in the Magic of Incarnum, which is basically a book that focuses a lot on the type of magic that you could create using souls. One of the 3 classes on the book is called the Incarnate, which basically focuses on picking a single powerful facet, concept, or alignment such as law, chaos, good, or evil, and then you basically further that cause and gain power by doing that. And one of the things that you can do, not just as that class, but just in the book in general, is that you're able to manipulate souls and produce magical items using those souls. In other words, in Dungeons & Dragons, if you wanted to explicitly just use the power of hope and make an entire class strictly based out of that concept, rather than to be a cleric that follows that concept, then you would be an incarnate, and it would also explain why she would have access to gloves that can seemingly manipulate souls and even consume them. In theory, through the use of soul melts, which is the term that they use on that book, you could create many of the things that are found here in the House of Hope. It actually fits insanely well, but like I said, we would have to conveniently forget that her stat block literally says cleric. Also, another hugely popular theory is that actually Hope might be what we call a Genius Loci. So the Genius Loci are monsters that were released back in 3rd edition for the Epic Level Handbook, a supplement designed so that players could level up higher than level 20. And so to accompany those rules, they released monsters that were insanely strong. And one of those monsters was the Genius Loci, which is basically a spirit of the land. Technically speaking, any location that becomes sentient would fall under the category of a Genius Loci. And these are usually represented as the spirit of the forest, a creature that would be able to control every tree and every rock within a forest, or perhaps something like the creepy moon from Majora's Mask, because that would be like a fully sentient location, a fully sentient moon. Now, the cool thing about the concept of a Genius Loci and why it does fit fairly well is that even though they would have a core, they still would have full omnipresence all around the region that they possess, and further, they would be able to sort of take over the minds of certain creatures that live within their territory and then communicate as if they were them. So if the House of Hope was sentient, it could possess a creature like Hope and then speak through her, even pretend to be her. And it also makes sense why she wouldn't be able to just do that to any of the other debtors that are found in this location because, well, they're not really living creatures, or mortals for that matter. It is actually a very common trope that fiends and undead are immune to these kinds of possessions, so it would actually still follow. It would also explain why she would not be able to leave the House of Hope, which is, of course, one of the bigger contentions that sort of overcomplicates things. Now, I do want to at least point out, because I am sure that it'll be brought up in the comments, that there is actually a House of Hope in the lore of the Forgotten Realms. The original canon House of Hope was a temple in the city of Tantras, far, far away from Baldur's Gate. It was a temple that was built to honor Tymora, the goddess of luck. There is no reason to necessarily believe that these are the same locations. We're not really given any reason to believe it so, but it is something that I do want to point out because, of course, they have the same name. And we are, after all, dealing with what is effectively a possibly religious location, which both would be in this case. And I should also point that it is definitely possible that Hope could be a cleric of Tymora, and that this House of Hope that we see in the game could either be the very same one from the Forgotten Realms, but transplanted onto Hell as a result of some unfortunate event, of course very similar to what happened to Elturel, or that this particular House of Hope was created by Hope herself, perhaps through the Temple of the Gods spell or in any other way. So if you do subscribe to the Temple of the Gods theory, then actually this edition would further wrap that theory very nicely, and would actually guide you into finding out what type of cleric Hope could actually be. Hope is one of the most mysterious characters in Baldur's Gate 3. From the fact that Raphael appears absolutely obsessed with her, but it's never explained why, to the fact that she can control Raphael's entire lair, but it is never explained how, ending in the fact that it is clear that Hope has morphed into something entirely different, something powerful and scary, but it is never explained what. The world of Dungeons & Dragons, and Baldur's Gate 3 for that matter, is filled with mystery, secrets, and all manner of answers, some more satisfying than others. But I think, together, I am sure that we can find an answer to them all. If you feel like I missed something, a crucial fact, an important piece of dialogue, a clue, or anything else that might help illuminate the myriad of questions that surround Hope as a character, please do not hesitate to write them here in the comments so that we can all put as many of these pieces together the best that we can. And if you have a guess, or maybe your own theory as to what she might be or where the House of Hope might have come from, be sure to write it down so that we can all get some good high-spirited debate on this matter. Thank you all so much for your time. Okay, so a little, or I guess kind of a big correction. After doing the research and writing the script for this video, when I went into Baldur's Gate 3 to do a lot of the video recordings that you saw in the video, I actually noticed that nowhere in Hope's stat block does it ever say or show that she is a cleric. I sort of trusted in the BG3 wiki, which calls her a cleric, and assumed that the tooltip would show her as a cleric, and I was actually shocked to see that it doesn't. In a weird way, this actually validates so many of the theories, and I didn't even know that, as several of the theories actually were constrained by the concept of her drawing magic from a traditional class. For example, this actually makes the incarnate theory even more plausible, because the big drawback for that theory was that it said that she was a cleric. But if it doesn't, it does open a lot more possibilities. But anyhow, that being said, thank you all so much for watching, and I hope that you enjoyed this kind of video. I did promise that I would be delving deeper into Baldur's